What's a scientific fact that creeps you out? Obligate siblicide. In some species of animals, multiple offspring are born but only one is actually raised by the mother. The others are born only as backup in case the firstborn doesn't survive. When the firstborn is fine, which is the typical case, it kills the others. I have similar feelings about intrauterine cannibalism. Caterpillars turn completely into goo in their cocoon, and then become a butterfly. And there is evidence they retain memories from their pre-goo days. Memories of strong positive/negative stimuli that they show preference for/aversion to, even after metamorphosis. Pre-goo days. I love it. That as the permafrost melts, a lot of locked up methane will be released. And microorganisms there will wake up and do their jobs, breaking down organic matter, and release more methane and greenhouse gases. And possible ancient diseases. COVID-22 BC. A fever is your body way of saying, we don't negotiate with terrorists. We either destroy the enemy or we die with them. Immune system. Haha, at 42C the bacteria will die. Brain. But we will die to FFS. Because of some pesticides used. Roaches won't go anywhere near a meth lab. Undefined. Let's just take a moment to appreciate the fact we don't have so deal with swarms of cranked up cockroaches. Well, thank you for the nightmares. Your brain is making decisions before you are even aware of the decisions it has made. It also makes decisions based off of learned behavior and you just go along with it. A study actually showed your limbs, fingers, toes, etc. react to stimuli before your brain sends the response to do so. That's just human reflex arcs. A gamma ray burst could wipe out all life on Earth instantly with no warning. Of peeping what? An ultra-powerful supernova that sends incredibly powerful blasts of gamma rays across the galaxy at light speed. If one hits Earth, everything is erased instantly. There is virtually no way to ever see one coming. So we would never even know it happened before we were all killed. That there are little crab-like things crawling on your face. So if I boil my face, I have a lunch. Well, more of a small snack. Just how big of a number a mole actually is. I can still remember the mole song our chemistry teacher played for us. The song is from when the world population was 5 billion. The brain can play tricks on you. When you look at a clock and the second hand seems to freeze for a moment, your brain is actually generating a false memory, and your perception of time stretches slightly backward. This effect is called chronostasis. Wait, what? Pay attention to the second hand of a clock. Blink, and see how long it stays there. The sudden urge to jump off of a very high height. You can be physically and mentally stable to the greatest degree and still have this feeling when at such a high height. I heard it's the call of the void and it's a normal human thought. The best example is when you're driving along and think, for a fraction of a second, about swerving into oncoming traffic or into a tree. Some mutations of just one letter in the DNA code can kill the fetus almost instantly. But some people live and have a seemingly healthy life while missing a whole chromosome. If you understand anything about biology, that's completely wild. I think mutations in cytochrome C are pretty much lethal, and cytochrome C has barely changed in millions of years. Cytochrome C, the load-bearing drywall of the genome. That so many vegetables came from the same plant. Broccoli, kale, kohlrabi, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, etc. They are, botanically speaking, the same species. Humans have just bred them to emphasize different traits: buds, leaves, tubers. Imagine if humans were as genetically flexible. Imagine a person walking around with giant toes, but otherwise normal. Actually, plant genetics in general is a weird world. I mean, if we spent generations selectively breeding ourselves based on traits like giant toes, something like that could happen. Just look at dogs. The canine family is actually unusual in that respect. The entire canine family has slippery genes. I don't understand it. I'm not a geneticist. Just read about it and is much more variable in their phenotypes than other families of mammals. Look at other animals that have been domesticated for thousands of years: cats, horses, sheep and goats, cattle. The breeds vary in their appearances, but nowhere near as much as different breeds of dogs do. A Shetland pony and a Percheron draft horse resemble each other much more than do a pug and a greyhound. Ditto a Siamese cat versus an American Shorthair, or a Nubian goat versus a Boer goat. If you believe strongly enough that you have been cursed, your brain can shut itself off entirely in severe cases. The psychological term for it is voodoo death syndrome. It's just the fact you can literally think yourself to death that unsettles me so. That the only reason you are a functional human is that your DNA is so tangled that entire sections can't get decoded and screw it up. Actually, better one. If you disconnect the halves of the brain and ask them to pick out something they prefer, your hands will disagree. What's your favorite color will result in one hand choosing red but one choosing green. Go look up split brain patients. For research purposes, how does one go about disconnecting the sides of the brain? When the Titanic sank, none of the shoes decomposed, so there's ton of shoes at the bottom of the ocean. Free shoes. The depths people will sink to for free speep. Doctors/scientists are barely keeping up with the influenza virus. It keeps on mutating rapidly. It really wants to get inside you. At least something wants to. Thinking about how breathing and lungs work freaks me out. Once I start thinking about it, all I can think about is my breathing, and then I have to force myself to stop thinking about it. Thinking about it always switches my breathing to manual rather than automatic. Critical error. Manual blinking activated. You get and cure cancer in your own body thousands of times a day. Excuse me? What? Your body produces thousands and thousands of cells with damaged DNA. It's a bit of exaggeration to call them cancer, but if any of these cells were to survive, they could become cancerous. Your immune system destroys them before they get to that point. This is also why if you were to live forever, you would eventually get cancer, because the chances of your body missing them statistically increases. This occurs thousands upon thousands upon thousands of times a day. Your brain literally creates your own reality, and your senses and body just go along with it. People think the brain sees what the eyes tell it to. But really, the eyes pull up an image of blurry colors and dark spots, and the brain goes, cool, so that's a tree. The first AI that can successfully pass the Turing test would be able to pretend that it couldn't. That's terrifying. There is something called the squeeze, where when people had old scuba suits with tubes, you could actually get sucked into that tube if the pressure was off. You are literally shredded through your own breathing tube. Hate to be that guy, but that's hard hat surface supply diving. Not scuba. Scuba is by definition self-contained. But yes, it is possible. Mythbusters showed it in rather spectacular fashion. Though the pig carcass didn't actually make it all the way up the tube. Undefined. Parasites can live anywhere inside of you, for years unnoticed. A simple migraine could be a tapeworm crawling in your brain, causing damage. Your eyes begin to blur frequently and you don't know why, and it's not getting better. Losing weight and having diarrhea, but it's not a stomach bug. Well, I guess it is. You are having a difficult time catching your breath and your chest doesn't feel right. It could just be some parasite hanging out, using you. Top 5 ways to intensify anxiety. Number 1. This post. This post covers all from no 1 to 5. Spider webs were used as bandages in ancient times. After being decapitated, there's still few seconds of brain activity that happen before you snuff out. I read this in the book Stiff by Mary Roach. I'm not sure how much I recall or how correctly I recall, but two things stuck with me. Apparently they had to change the head catching baskets sometimes because the severed heads would try to chew through them. The other thing that stuck with me is that some doctor was experimenting with the heads right after decapitation. He would inject oxygenated blood into the heads and they would move their eyes around and look at him. Where did he get the oxygenated blood from?